Tonight's opening Tuesday evening for spring 2019 season is also much anticipated and frankly overdue. I have been a fan of Brad Tucker and his work for so long, and I'm not sure how this hasn't already been a thing, but I'm glad it's a thing tonight. No surprise, I'm not alone in my admiration for Brad and his work. It seems that to know Brad is to love him. I know some of you not only braved the weather, but you also braved traffic to be here tonight. And the love runs deep throughout Texas and beyond for this very generous and authentic artist-musician. Brad Tucker grew up in California, and he now lives in Austin. He earned a BFA from UNT in 1991. Was an artist resident at the museum in the Museum of Fine Arts core program from 1999 to 2000, and has had an active studio practice with international exhibitions and performances over the past 2 decades. He went on to pursue an MFA from the Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts at Bard College, which he received in 2009. And Brad has shown heavily throughout Texas in venues such as the Gallery in Dallas, the Old Jail Arts Center in Albany, Art House in Austin, and the Contemporary Art Museum in Houston. He was also part of a great exhibition project titled 3 Propositions and a Musical Scenario at 2525 Weisenberger. Here in Fort Worth, which was curated by Noah Symbolist and Subtext Projects. He is represented by Inman Gallery in Houston. His solo show, Temporary Relief, just closed last month. And Standard Tan, a solo exhibition at the Galveston Arts Center, opens on March 9th. So if anybody's in that neck of the woods, it looks like it's going to be a fabulous show. Brad's work can be found in impressive public and private collections, including the Dallas Museum of Art, the MFA Houston, the Menil Collection in Houston, the New Museum in New York, and the Plains Museum in Fargo, North Dakota. Of his title for the Inman show, Temporary Relief, Brad noted, quote, that's also what making art means to me, that temporary relief. It seemed too much to say there would be a permanent relief of anything for anybody. It is that kind of thinking, that humor and that insight that defines what Brad does in art and music, which I think situates us perfectly to begin tonight's presentation. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Brad Tucker.
Thanks, Terry. That was so nice. Thank you. And now that she said that, I'm done. Okay. I'm going to turn my phone off too. Right here. Okay. Okay, thanks for coming out, everybody. I'm so honored to be here and be invited to do something like this. This is always a kind of a highlight for me, you know, so be asked to do this. So yeah, I'll get started. But I would just say about being an artist, being asked to do something like this, it's just, I just wanted to be respected. I felt like a charlatan for most of my artistic career, and now finally people are, you know, I only say that in jest a little bit, but that is often the way I feel, but that's just personal, that's me, because I'm a little bit desperate sometimes. But, yeah, all right, so. But okay, so tonight I'm going to show you, I'm going to go back way back in time for me, which I called it an ancient wonders period, which are some of my early works that even from after the time I finished school until around the time I had my first exhibition, and then kind of move on through some of my projects and then kind of get to where I am now. And I don't know, I hope it reveals several things about me. One, maybe just a little bit more of a sort of aura around what I do with my work. Maybe we'll probably also reveal like the missteppings of an amateur photographer as he travels from film photography across the bridge to digital photography. You'll see that here. And so you're going to see some like grainy, kind of nostalgic looking photos. Those are way back in the slide days. And then you'll see like some things. So, and when I say amateur, I mean that as a compliment because I like to take my own pictures. Sometimes there are pictures here that other people have taken, but I always kind of like the way they look, and even though they don't look professional. So here we go. All right. So I'm going to start out with some of these images. Do you like the slide presentation format, by the way? I put the titles up there. For most of these have slides, but and the screen is just amazing in here. I've never seen my work on a screen like so big. But yeah, but anyways, some of my early works, this is after I finished college. I studied painting at North Texas. I was a student of Vernon Fisher's, a Fort Worth artist. And I came out of school without a plan, except for like as far as what my plan about what I would do as far as like my life as an artist. There was a time where I did a lot of like odd jobs. I worked in a sign company. I fell in love. I played in rock bands, but I didn't know what I did, and I kept making artwork, but it was kind of private, and it wasn't for probably 8 years before I had my first exhibition out of undergrad. So I just want to say that about me. I was sort of not unambitious, but I wasn't like thinking of the future so much. But the kind of works I made were like, I studied painting, but they weren't really paintings. I used fabrics and stretched over these forms, and I was impatient. And I mean, that is a virtue because I wanted like to make something, and as quick as I made it, put it up on the wall and see how it performed on the wall. I wasn't fussy, and I still really am not that fussy of an artist. I actually thought being fussy was a bit of a sin. And so to me, it was closer to the original idea if I just made it quickly. And I just mostly wanted to see how it looked up on the wall. Something that's been in my work since the beginning is that I just want to make objects to see how they perform, either alongside each other or in relationship to a space, or some things on the floor, some things on the wall, more than what they had within their own components. Sometimes that seemed a little bit superfluous, I guess. Like that's why I would use like found fabrics, because they were already colored and I didn't have to think about coloring them, and things like that. Also, that material, foam rubber, was a favorite of mine. I still love it. It was super easy to cut on a bandsaw, super fast, and whichever way you squished it, it always returned back to its original shape. So it was good, and it took paint in a weird way. So that one in the middle is one of my first kind of like sculptural objects I made after studying painting. And you'll see this is another story in my work, how I've left more kind of like typical painting formats into like other kind of more 3D kind of things that still have a sort of vestigial relationship to painting. Okay, so that's that. And the titles, like that one's called Woman's Woe because it was just the first 2 letters of woman, and I couldn't finish the rest of the piece, so it's called Woman's Woe. But some people try to suggest that it meant something different, but no, it's just like, sometimes, like that's when one of my professors said this to me once when I was working on a painting, which I wasn't finished. He said, I like the way you stopped right there, like you got bored or something. And I said, yeah, so if you're getting bored, you should just stop and go. So, all right. I know I probably sound like supremely self-effacing, and I tend to be, but it's also just the way I talk. So sometimes I describe my work in ways that people might think is detrimental, but to me, I'm being complimentary in my own way. So just something that you might get used to. Okay, these are some other pieces. There was there's nothing pictorial about them. The shapes are the image, and but there are some things sneaking in, like I said, I worked in the sign shop. I built aluminum letters at a shop out in Irving that I went to the day after I graduated, and that was pretty informative. And I realized that there were many things about making the supports for these aluminum letters that had to do with the way we made canvas supports and stretchers and stuff. So I sort of exploited that. And those titles, I think, suggest performative aspects of the work, too. That piece over there on the right, I call that "This Keeps Happening" because even still to this day, when I look at it, it keeps going back and forth from being a kind of a little bit wampajawed letter Z to being like a pyramid, just real easily for me. And that's why it's called "This Keeps Happening." But I wanted, like the fact that I used the word "happening" in the title also suggests a link to some kind of a bygone era of performance. And these are some pieces that were in an early exhibition I had at Engstrom Gallery. If you guys know Engstrom Gallery, back in 2000, which was I've never found a gallery that was as satisfying for me as an artist as Engstrom Gallery was in the year 2000 in that era. It's never been as fun. It's never been as exciting. It's always a disappointment after Engstrom. Yeah. But those clouds, I started using these cloud shapes a lot, which were just made by tracing paint cans and cutting them out on a bandsaw. And they were usually found woods, like that was from an old cabinet door from a construction job I had. And this is from my first exhibition I was ever in. It was a 2-person show at a gallery that was in Houston. I'd moved to Houston after spending some time in Austin after school, and I moved to Houston to get a teaching job. I was teaching students who were in a middle school. They were blind and visually impaired, and this was one of the things I did after school before I ever exhibited my work, is I got my teacher certification and learned Braille and all this, and it was the best job ever. But there's a gallery that somehow I met up with some of my old friends from college, and they lived in Houston. They were artists, and then I started to imagine that, I could show my work. And this was the first show. It was at a gallery called Nancy Littlejohn Fine Art Gallery, and she disappeared after the show. This is another theme in my career, is like galleries disappear after they show my work. But actually, she's resurfaced lately in a big way. Now she's got Bill Arning, who left the CAM Houston, and he's her curatorial director, and they've opened up with a lot of flash in Houston. But that was that piece on the right was made. This is the way I made paintings, sort of a continuation of college. It was just stretched triangular frames with found fabrics, and that painting's called Sand Dollar, which was the name of the thrift store where they generously put all the green clothes together, all the orange clothes together, and so I would just go and pick out the fabrics I like and then go and stretch them on a panel and put it up on the wall and see what it looks like. Okay. Here's my pieces performing again too. This was like a staged photo op with friends. Yeah. So I was touched by what you said about people who know me, because I was somehow about the arts, whether it was music or visual arts. To me, it was like it would be worthless without friendships that people have, and that seems to be one of the biggest things. Like my biggest audience are my friends. That's who I think about when I make art, or my friends, and it was the same with music too. So those are two of my close friends, Todd and Duncan, and that was just really kind of a funny ploy to put the artwork above the couch and then twist them around to suggest like arbitrary qualities of abstraction and just things like that. So plus they just look funny, those guys. Okay, and there's some more foam rubber works and. Okay, I'm going to tell one story. I hope I don't just go on, because I've only gotten to the tip of the iceberg of this slide presentation. But the reason the skateboards are there, I know she said I'm from California, and I did ride a skateboard, but I feel like my use of skateboard is something much more pedestrian than the slick California, skateboarder. It's not that, but when I was in college, there's some things that I still remember from college, and this is one thing. I was in Vernon Fisher's class, and I remember there was an art building with a painting studio, but I didn't like to work there. I worked at home, and I made a big painting that was like 6 feet by 6 feet that I had to bring over to critique. And critiques were super exciting. Vernon was like, he'd bludgeon people. Not really. No, he was just very firm with his opinions, and people left in tears and stuff like this. It was pretty typical, but I loved it. And so I was like, I gotta get my painting over there. So I put the big painting, I didn't have a car or a vehicle, on my skateboard and just pushed it across campus. And this was a way and so the skateboard was only used as just a tool to move this thing. And when I took the painting into the critique and put it up there, Vernon said, yeah, it's good, but it's missing something. I don't know. And he didn't say it like that. He sounded like Vernon. But he said it's missing something. So I said, oh. So I just took the skateboard and put it on the ground upside down and put the painting on top of the skateboard. And he goes, that's it. It was but it was something I remembered. And it also was like exploiting things about my work that I really was most interested in, which was like the physical parameters of the object, like its support, its objectness, all these things, way more than I was of anything about painting in an illusory kind of way like this. So it was that. So later when I started making things out of like sculpture and plaster and stuff and learning some like rudimentary casting techniques, I thought of that, and that's why I started the skateboards continuing to work. So that's what I mean, it's sort of more like pedestrian. It was more suggesting transitory nature of objects or movement or some things like that, okay? Rather than skateboard coolness. But if you think I'm cool, that's awesome too, okay? So here we go. And that's some more like the sign fonts that were, that fine right there was the same font that was being used at the new museum built in Houston, the Audrey Jones Beck building. And a lot of people complained about these concrete letters out front, but I thought they were pretty wonderful. So, and because my work was now becoming like sculptural and had some sort of residue of painting, it made sense that these were more like installations. So this was an early installation, and it also incorporated the first time I made like a record player, and I also made my own records of recordings, and then cast the records in plastic, so they played back with like sort of invigorated fidelity, I guess. Like it's like not as good as a real record, but it's close, I thought it would be kind of better if it was disappointing when they put the record on than if it was actually sounding really good. But anyways, there's hardly anything to hear on that record. It's just a cast plastic white disc that has a recording of my wife and I. We had just been married, but reading silently for 7 minutes. So it was like, it's really, you just hear little bumps and hisses and then air bubbles that make the needle pop and so. And this is one of my most romantic installations, I think. I'm just being silly. What?
Where was it?
Oh, that was at the old Inman Gallery in Houston when she still had a house. A lot of galleries in Texas start out in houses. This is true, okay? That's Trent Hancock, as dressed up as his character Torpedo Boy, and I brought a drum set into my studio for, I started getting into this idea of like what it was, how do I make sound in art, and it seemed like a problematic thing, but it was also in my interest. And so when Trent came by, there we go. I would record people coming by my studio. Trent's studio was next door, and I would record them doing. I said, just do a drum solo, and he was really good on the drums. He just did it, and I made all these recordings of people coming by. Some were artists like Trent. There were a few musicians, there were friends, there were amateurs. Some of my students from the middle school who are visually impaired, because we had a rock band in my room. Called the 1-2-3 band, which was my classroom number. We were like School of Rock before School of Rock. Jack Black, they had the right to me to like get permission to do that movie. Well, not really, but I'm just saying my drum set was in my classroom, so it was easy to bring it over to the studio. And because I was the only teacher of students with visual impairments, the only one who knew Braille in the whole school, they gave me tons of leeway for what I could do. And it was easy for me to justify like playing rock songs if we made them, the lyrics were about like a Greek myth or something, or some kind of reading thing. So we made songs about the Cyclops, the Apache Indians, all these things. It was pretty wonderful. And they loved it so much, and they got so good that we started getting asked to do gigs outside. And they were on the news. The news came to my classroom. These kids walking around with canes and stuff in my classroom. And they interviewed them. They recorded them jamming. It was super cool. And that, weirdly enough, as I was just doing what I love to do with people, I got Teacher of the Year that year. I don't know, it was like, wow, this is, so it was a lesson for teachers who feel like burdened by all the things you have to teach. You do have a lot of permission to do things, really, as a teacher, okay? But I will say this, too, those people who are complaining now, and I totally disagree with this, about the evil, about teachers who are out there and influencing the youth to indoctrinate them to their I don't know, uber liberal ways or something like this that people complain about, and you've heard it in the news. There is some truth in that, because most of my students who are in this class at band, the 1, 2, 3 band, are now like rock stars. They are all in heavy metal bands, and they are super good. I mean, they kept it up. They kept playing, and I'm still in touch with them. But here's one of them. That's Martin. But that's from one of our shows. But anyway, so I took all these recordings, some of my students' friends, and my first solo show, which was just me, I kind of made a pun of that, and the show was called Drum Solos. It was kind of a pun on the solo show, but it was also like these recordings I made on this record to be like, it was a double album of records. I was sort of the producer that had all these recordings. And then I made them, use the sculptural process to cast a record, which caused a needle to jump around and stuff, and it seemed to me like a weird way to mix together all these aspects of my life, which was like past and present and future, really, but into one informational system, which was the record. And then like the actual speakers were sort of, to me, what seemed like animated paintings in a way. That's how I saw it. And that was a poster we made for the opening. Okay. This right here, that picture's from the Dallas Museum showed that piece a while back, but it was initially at Inman Gallery, but that's from the Dallas Museum. And here's some close-ups of it. And I did some other projects. This one was called Singles. It was a little different, but it had these custom record players, 2 of them, so that the idea that 2 records could play at once. And I was kind of playing on the language of it, like the 7-inch records were called singles, but I also wanted it to be like a kind of like online dating club. So I asked these people through emails. Email was pretty early for me in those days. I wasn't like a pioneer, but I just invited people to send me recordings of themselves and a snapshot, and just that the recordings would be like playing a solo instrument or singing a cappella or something. So I got like 24 recordings and made 12 of these 7-inch singles, 1 on each side. So there's and then I used their photo snapshots as the record covers. And so the idea that like if you went into this exhibition, you could like pick solely based on appearance of the record covers, like what these people look like, or you might imagine, so you would play them, and then that it's either going to like work out or it's going to be terrible, right? Like when you hear them together, this sort of matchmaking that goes on. But the thing is, that the funniest thing about it to me was that they all have those white labels, like it doesn't have any indication what's on the record. So as they get filed back, I'm sure like they're all misfiled, so it doesn't really matter anyway. So I just like that the information was purely like auditory and visual. There were no words about it. But that was a fun piece to do, just because it involved, I enjoyed working with other people like this, and from different, like in the previous piece, from different avenues. And it was also a fun sculptural proposition to customize the record players. Like I would get record players and take them apart and then put them together in these kind of ARPy, like kind of quasi-modernist ways. So, which was what I was into. I was into this. And there's some people at the opening. That's a pretty nostalgic looking photo, wouldn't you say? That would translate blurry. Okay. All right. These are just kind of variations of these themes that I've been developing right here. And So I told you I cast the records. Like this one is like a garage sale record that I picked up and made a cast of. But I haven't showed you what they play like. There you see like the skateboards are kind of performing too, like a kind of kick trick, kind of flip underneath those cylinders. But this next thing is I can play you a little bit. This is a song called Stick Up by a group called Honeycomb. But you'll see what I mean by increased fidelity, invigorated fidelity. Okay, it goes on and on, right? That's just a sample. I'll stop it. Right? If I can figure out how to stop it. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. That you know what's funny of that piece? It was, or this if I go back to previous, that piece that was, in the previous slide. Oh, what's going on there? Okay. I'll go back this way. This one right here. Oh, go back here. This one that you see on the right, it's called Turntable with Blue Records, Stick Up. The person who owns that piece now is the direct owner of Bed Bath & Beyond. So I just it's like I don't know. It was kind of funny to me. Yeah. I put that video on YouTube, and it was surprising how much people hated me for that record, because they go up looking up the song, and I was called a huge waste of time and everything. Okay. And so what I was going to say about about audio and visual things, like I started realizing that, and these pictures don't show it, that video was a good way to separate audio and visual, and so in the pictures you see here, this was at a place called Saladias in San Antonio. These sculptures, and one of them, this one on the right, has speakers in it, so it makes sound, but it's attached to a video that they had, he had an already mounted small television monitor in the back office of Saladias where he had all his stuff. So when I made a video with some music on it, it was like a nature video. I don't have it to show you, but it played in the back office. Nobody ever really saw it, but all you heard was a sort of incidental music that I had kind of put to go with this. It was just split. So when you walked into the gallery, you just hear the music sporadically starting and stopping, and it was homemade music, and it was a little strange that I could do that, but I liked that about that, separating the audio and the visual, and so I started using video. I'll show you in a little bit. I made these kind of modular things. It's the same thing like I was doing with the early sand dollar piece, just putting these panels together. I don't know if you can see it that well. That sign up there on the top left was from a guitar store in my neighborhood in Houston called Fuller's Vintage Guitar. And I was into Buckminster Fuller, and I wanted to make one of these domes just to see what, and then, so I just called it Fuller's Vintage Guitar, and I thought it was sort of like a sound pavilion or something a little bit, but on the inside, it's like a faced out geometric painting, and it was all interchangeable, and it all came apart and stuff. And these are the kind of headphones I use in my classroom for when we had audio books and stuff. They're old style that I just remade. And I was really into casting things in a real kind of fast way for a while with plastics and stuff. I was thinking a little bit about silence and sound and all that. And props, these are prop objects. They weren't the real thing. And then these are talking like, these are like speaker designs that I made, and but just would face out with just a stretched panel. And it was kind of an extension of this kind of, oh, I'll go back up, stretched paintings. But now they're sort of in this kind of a thing, and they suggest speaker cabinets, but they're hollow. They're just, they're like surrogates for cabinets. Yeah. That one was called Rockin' Robin. A lot of them had bird names like Mockingbird or Nightingale. This was my favorite one that I made a long time ago, and then I kind of returned to making some of those more recently. That one on the left is called Potholder, because the speaker, the fabric part there is like a potholder that I wove. And then Eclipse over there. And I'll show you the backs. So the backs were just hollow cabinets, like a place where you could hide things. Like really for potholder, I really thought you could put your pot in there, like that. And or whatever, you put little dolls or something like this. Or but they let light through because the back was open. So and it's just a fabric face. So like that one on the right. I call it Eclipse because depending on where it was positioned in the room, from the face of the circle, sorry about that, would appear to be like lit, like a lamp or something. I thought of these as like modular kind of things. There's another, that's it. This was another installation I did at another instance at Inman Gallery, which has now moved to Midtown Houston. Like it's their new space. It's bigger, more pro, but more legit. But so I made this big dome. It was like 15 feet across, and I just thought it was. I was intrigued by this idea of making something in my small workspace at home that I could then assemble, and it would be big like this, and then it could all just be taken apart. And for me, I thought it was a generous offering to like have the dome upside down so that the big ring was facing up. And these things in the background are these kind of like maybe like half scale dinner tables with tablecloths. So I thought the whole thing was sort of like a dramatic evening theater type thing or something like that, like see what I mean about like I wanted there to be a performative aspect to it. But that's what it looked like in the gallery. But to me, in my eyes, the next slide right here is like when it looked the best, which is where I made it and on my dirt driveway, and the lighting's much better. I don't know, and also it has my cat who's no longer around, and that's my ninth grade son now. He's in ninth grade now. Yeah. I lived out in this area that was like 3 acres for a while, and that's probably why I wanted to make some kind of offering to the skies. Like I saw the dome geometries as sort of constellations, and I thought by turning it upending it, it was mirroring what was there already every night in the like kind of like rural skies. It was like only sub-rural, but it was dark skies. It wasn't a lot of atmospheric light. So that's why I like this image better than the one at the gallery. Here's some proposals. Like I never made, but one day I will if I can moor these sculptures into the sea. And there will be a soundtrack of Claude Debussy, The Sea, which is like one of my favorites symphonies. If you've ever heard it, it's like totally impressionistic. It's great. But that's what I want to do. Those are some drawings of my sculptures. And I guess it's another I just thought of it as a comparison now of the outdoors to the indoor, like more restrained indoor spaces.
So would it be two? Like
well, I think.
On-site kind of thing, or?
I didn't really think this through so much, but I thought maybe that they're like.
Like one place that has those and those are in the ocean, but they're all the same.
I think that I thought that I should put them up on the pillars like that inside the gallery, because some of the galleries I showed at flooded, so that this would prevent like water damage. But, right. But I don't know why I got carried away drawing this thing. So it was more like it was a proposal that was imaginary. But this one was one that actually did do, this was like, I started seeing that I could be making these objects, and then it would be good if they were on TV, and then the objects were part of these TV things that involved music, and then the TVs would play the music and the objects, but then the objects were there, and I did make something like that. But I guess I started wanting to see how my objects would be through photography and TV, and I found that it really flattens them in a terrible way, but it's still kind of good. So here's a video. This is a video that's made from projecting photos of my sculptures onto the wall, and then as I'm projecting it, I play a sound on some kind of noise-making device, and then I'm videotaping each sort of clip of that, and then putting it all together to make this video that's called Sculpture Catalog on Video. I'll play it right now. It's 1 minute long, so. All right, that's it. And here, let me go to the next slide. So that was like a little mini presentation within the presentation. I didn't realize how meta this was going to be. So if you don't like this one, you can remember that one. And then, so this picture shows, like, I also started using videos of myself as a performer, and they became the backdrops for a music group that I have. It's called, where I take the R from the first name and put it in the last. That's Bad Trucker, and it's like a one-person band. So these kind of videos where I would record and then parts of songs, and then I would write songs or make up songs that then I would perform. Like, it was sort of like halfway between live and like karaoke or something, like homemade karaoke. So this was from one of my practices where I was getting the videos right. And I do this like once a year maybe or something. What usually happens with Bad Trucker is I don't do it for a while, and then I get this weird feeling that I should do it. So then I kind of put it out there that I'd like to do it if anybody would like me to. And somebody usually loves to see somebody, I don't know, feel so awkward like I do. And so they invite me to do it. Afterwards, I'm just like completely miserable that I ever thought it would be a good idea. And then about 6 months go by, and then I start thinking like, I could do that again. And it happens like this. There's actually no growth in the project. It never gets better. It just stays what it is. It's kind of perfect in that regard. Okay. There's some other. So also sometimes I play like. I made this video, which had a video behind me of myself, like recording a beat with my mouth, and then also adding to the beat with the subsequent video, and then that becomes like the drum sound. Yeah. And so this is one I've used the kind of variations of this. That sign that you see over on the right is a sign that I painted in mimicry of an actual sign that was on my commute to work every day, the mini office paid electric. And I just liked the way it looked, mostly because the paid electric kind of did a subtle S curve. And the black on yellow has always been like, if it's meant to be eye-catching, it works for me. I'm just like, oh yeah. black on yellow. But so I made that sign the same size as the original, and then I would go back there and hold it up like those people who do the like human advertising, which I started seeing cropping up more and more, because I think it was like a job, right? But it was also totally humiliating to have to stand out there. Maybe not. Maybe there's some liberation and freedom in it. I don't know. But I always thought whoever did it, whoever hired those people must be really cynical to have people standing out there with a sign all day. But so I would go out there and like do free advertising, and then my son would be in the truck across the street filming me with the video camera, and then I would use that as a backdrop for the performances. So that's what's going on there. And what you see on the right is sort of some of the other sort of like sculptural accoutrements that attended this performance like this. So that was like part of it. So, or maybe that's the small office. I'm not sure, but. Okay, here's actual kind of one of my songs I'll play.
What?
I always needed helpers.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's pretty much what you can expect when you go. Right? Okay. So so this is more of my school. This is some of my graduate work. Like later, that I was doing the bad trucker thing in graduate school. I went to like Bard College was very multidisciplinary, so I tried all kinds of things, and I was like, they loved Bad Trucker at college. And like, because it would be like I'd perform in the dorm room. I just use a TV that's already there. It's dark in there. People are already drunk and stuff. And not that you have to be drunk to enjoy it. I'm not saying that, but they were drunk. It was like Friday night after a week of grueling critiques or something, and there was a party. And they just thought it was the best thing. And I actually thought, oh, this is really fun. But then when I try to do it, when I come back to Texas, there'd be like, you could hear a penny drop. It would just like people. I don't know. There were probably some people who liked it, but I don't know. It didn't feel right. It didn't have the same kind of connection I had to place that when I made it there and stuff. But anyway, so I also made these other kind of sculptural gate-like forms. I don't know, I hesitate to call them gates, but they were meant to be like forms that could stretch to the parameters of a space and all this. And by doing so, they change shape and all this stuff. So. What I'm getting at, like I got into these for a while, different versions of them and stuff. Sometimes they're compressed, sometimes they're pulled out. I had a thesis about it and all this, and something about fragile boundaries and all this. But also some more other things too. I mean, I think there's still something about them that is important to me, but I came to something later. I'll show you. So I did those things, and there's one that was called accordion, and so they had some musical references. And about this time, also graduate school, like I mentioned before, I used impatience as what I thought is an aesthetic virtue. I'm becoming slower, and I'm sort of taking my time making things a little bit more. Like craft is kind of like I've sort of inherited this idea of craft from my grandfather, who was a woodworker, and I'm totally into it. But just a little better. More, not all the way better. I'm still not fussy, but a little more stuff. I have to leave room for growth as an artist. So if you see my work from 20 years ago till now, you'll say, oh, he's really gotten better. But it's just because I've just increased my skills on a few things. But also it would be disingenuous for me to act like I could make things the way I used to make them now, because I'm a different person now. I'm way more adult. So that trumpet was one of my first really kind of detailed craft pieces, and then this piece over here is called Word for a Letter, and that's it's based on the kind of neon patterns I used to draw for the sign shop I worked in, and then the glass blower would blow those things, so I made what the glass blower would do. So those were all those pieces were in a show, all those gate pieces and these pieces. But there was something about the gate things, I don't know, it was like kind of there for me, but then I was invited to do this project called, which was to make a children's hardcover book. It's about 6 inches square for infants, and it was all made with inks that would not cause harm if the child chewed on the book or something, because they chewed on the books and stuff. And so I said, oh, that's what I need to do with these gates. And I had been visiting my father out before he passed away. He lived in near Eugene, Oregon, out on the coast in a town called Florence, where they had 40 miles, they called the Great Sand Dunes, like this. And we would go there, we'd walk the dogs, and my kids would go down it on these sand sleds and stuff. And then I remembered Monaghan Sand Dunes out in West Texas, had visiting there before. And I started thinking about those dunes, and it was timely with my father and all. And then I was invited to do this, and I thought that I wanted to make a kind of, use these gate things out in the sand dunes, and it ended up formally resolving my own weird feelings about the previous gate works, and I'll show them to you in a second, because it dealt with the support of those gates. What bugged me about them is they either had to lean up against the wall, or hang on the wall, or use some kind of apparatus that I'd make to have them be freestanding. But if I just plant them in the sand like this, then all of a sudden there's this whole nebulous space of horizon, difficult to calculate distance between horizon and foreground, because it's all sand and kind of monotone, and they're freestanding now without some apparatus. I just put them in there, and that's what I did. And I made the rules I made for the book were that it was going to be a real sparse poem. It's about wild grasses and pets and stuff, the poem is, and that the actual text would have to be actual objects in the scene that I photographed, so it became kind of a photo book. So that's why the letters, pets, are in there, because I didn't want to do any kind of digital overlay. The thing I learned about this, though, is that if you're going to do a photo project in the sand dunes, bring a helper. It was a long drive out there to Monahans, and it was summer, because that's usually when I'm off work, because I'm a school teacher. So I go out there on a summer day by myself. The weather, I'm thinking it's going to be great time. It's really good light. And I get out there early, and I have my camera around my neck, and I'm bringing these boxes of things out, and I go up and set it up there, and I'll come back to take a picture, and the wind comes and just knocks it over. So it keeps happening like this. And then these foam letters will kind of blow around in the wind, and I think it's just going to fall to the ground or something. But then I'm running over the dunes with my camera around my neck, trying to catch the letter P as it's now bouncing over a dune. It was really traumatic, and I was really worried for myself. And after, I was so disgusted with myself, because I was I planned this so well, and I came all the way out here to do this, and it just sucks. It's going to be terrible. And then I couldn't even look at the pictures and for a couple of days, and then when I looked at them, they kind of worked. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I made like hundreds of pictures, so they weren't all like what I liked, but it was just a funny project, really. But so the book, and this woman who made the book, she has a press called Sober's Cove Press. She does like a lot of, not just children's books, you should look it up, Sober's Cove. She does like forgotten art histories and stuff. There's some really interesting stuff she does. And this was a project she did with the board books. And there's Sober's Cove. I think it's like sober, like SOBER, SCOVE. Yeah. And I like that one too. So those were some of the images from that book. This poem was really sparse, though. Like sometimes I give it to like when people at work have a baby or something, and even if they like, and I say, oh, I want to give you the book, and when the poem is really like only a few lines, it's like wild, it's like something pets, wild grasses, and in the back it says summer passes. It's very sparse. But for me, I remember books when I was a kid that were more about like visual literacy. Like it was just about seeing colors. Like I had a dump truck book that I remembered that was like the red color of the road made a big impression. So I didn't think words would matter that much to kids. And I'd rather be obtuse with my language than let the pictures do the talking in their own way. So, these next slides are just things I've liked that I've made. Like as I've transitioned to times thinking of myself as a sculptor more than a painter, they've been small and not too precious, I guess. And that's a piece called New Pool Rules that was like a frame. And but I'd started making these kind of pool-shaped things. They're just fabric-covered shapes, like pools. I mean, they look kind of like pools, like overhead views of pools. And there's another one. That one's called Kidney. That one's called Canal. And I thought they had like a kind of vague references to anatomy or organs. And that's one that I just made. Like that's a lot bigger, and that's going to be in my show in Galveston. That's called Capsule. But yeah, there's something about them that I'm interested in. Something about wanting to have a pool, I guess. Like it's better to have like an artwork like a pool than an actual pool, because a pool's like a boat, right? It's like you get the pool. What? Oh, well, I heard the best, like people say about boats, the two best days of the boats are the day you buy it and the day you sell it. And but pools are a lot, I mean, pools are great. I enjoy pools, but I'm not knocking pools, but they're a lot of work, right? Maintenance, and yeah. So, yeah. And here's some other pieces. That's, what do you think is a better title for that on the left? I've vacillated. It's either called Hopscotch or Beltline. What? Beltline. Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, and then yeah, that piece on the right, Noah Symbols has, who you mentioned. I gave it to him for his birthday. Yeah. So yeah. Well, Margaret, his wife. No, she did. We traded. So. And these are some of the pieces I showed at the Old Jail Art Center, and that TV tray was like a formal invention for me, which was it's reversing the structure and support of a painted panel by revealing it on the front like a tray, and then using the legs of the tray to prop it up on the wall. It seemed to me to work in that space of floor and wall and it had all the kind of performative qualities that I like about objects. That's really my test usually is when I make something is, does it work? Like I just want to see what it looks like when I make it. And yeah, the color has to be right for me, and the shape and all this. If it's not right, I know like immediately almost. So. But anyways, for the Old Jail Art Center, those two pieces on the right, those are just some examples of the works that were in it. One's called Generator, the other's called Regenerator. Because that was like 2 rooms upstairs, they kind of mirrored each other. A lot of the pieces I made were, I wanted to, like the 2 rooms to be essentially the same, but just reversed from, so, because the rooms were reversed, so I made my pieces and then kind of remade it backwards for that show. And also I played with the titles, like there was one pool piece that was called Repool, but then the backwards one was called Looper. So there was just kind of like this kind of flow going through the Old Jail Art Center. So then this, I'm kind of getting to the final stretches of this thing. So we moved to a new house, and in the shower there's this oyster shell type soap dish in there. Not unlike that, which I thought I couldn't stop looking at it. Every time I take a shower, it's just like, ah. So I decided to make that, and it was like a piece I made that's like meant to be recessed in the wall. It's made out of plaster, and it's sort of resembles like something you could put your hand into. But about the same time I was visiting the dentist to have like some like crown work done or something, and I was also applying for a job as a professor, which I've never been good at. But anyways, I knew while I was sitting there on the dentist chair, I have a busy life. I have kids, all this job, so it's weird, like you're on the dentist chair, that's like a moment where you can like have time to think about stuff and reflect. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about what kind of questions are they going to ask me at this interview, because I was a finalist and I knew it was important. I had to be prepared, and I know, because it was like a foundations position. It's like these questions are going to be about some of them are going to be about how are you going to address growing digital aesthetics and manufacturing and production within the foundations courses and within the curriculum. And I was just preparing for this, and I'm sitting there and I'm like in the dentist chair and I'm watching him like put in the x-rays, and then I see him, he's looking at these flat images on the screen of the inside of my mouth and my teeth, and he's pointing out all like, you know, how I'm a little long in the tooth here and all this stuff. And then he's like, oh, we need the crown, and they have to send that off to the shop. And it was like all the stuff I was thinking about right here. So I came up with this thing, like they're going to make the 3D like crown, and he's going to fit it in there, and then he's going to look at it in pictures. I'm like, it's all right there. And so that's where I got the title for this kind of like era of work is called, I've never called a show this or a piece this, but it's called The Dentist Provides the Metaphor. I don't even know if there's a metaphor there, but it's about that. And so I started relating this shower curtain to this. And I even started making these shower curtains. I made several for different things, but rather than plaster, I ordered dental stone, which was kind of nice because it comes in like tan, kind of like a light green or a light blue or an off-white. They're nice colored. Plaster's just white, which so I made this thing. So I was like, oh, it's a little bit of like playing with this, and I'd have to make the molds for it. But a lot of the titles, like this plaque enamel, is like referring at once to it being sort of like a plaque, but also this idea about teeth and stuff, and like I don't know. There's some other probably weird pathological aspects of it that have to do with me aging or something like this in this. But even though they don't look like that, they look like sunshiny and things like a lot of my work does. It's like there are thoughts like that in there. But here, let's see. So I did a whole bunch of these things. Like that orange is called Soft Crown. And a lot of these pieces here, I think all these pieces here were in this show at a kind of charming gallery in the Cedars in Dallas called Gallery, which isn't there anymore. But I like house galleries for some reason, because I don't know. It's the floor's like raggedy, and I don't know. There's a detail of what I meant by the kind of like sort of maturation of craft in my work that I'm talking about. I'm like getting a little bit more into shaping of things, and that's called Nightstand, and that's one of my favorites of those kind of like, for lack of a better word, TV tray type pieces. And that's an image from the show. So it had a record that I made for that show that played, and that speaker, and the show was called Decent Recent Pieces, which was also, I was thinking of pieces as musical compositions as well. And so the record I made has all these like smooth jazz standards that I recorded in my living room in my own way. And and that record's called Spare Changes. But so the Decent Recent Pieces is kind of a play on the idea of the work being at least decent, and the idea of these like jazz standards like this. So this, all right, this right here is called a lower 49, and it literally was like me having a crowded, like years of working in a small space, and cabinets and dressers full of these small wooden pieces that I've shown at times, some I never showed, that I then just pulled all out on the wall and just put them up on the wall in my studio, like that one right there on the left, and formalized a hanging of them, and I called it the lower 49. I don't think there's really 49 pieces, but the lower 49 sounded like half a life or something like that. But then, yeah, so it was kind of an end of an era in a way for me, because I made a lot of these smaller things, and I couldn't keep making them. I wanted to make different things, but I was still having people asking about them. I still have them around. I still enjoyed them for what they were, but I just wanted to try this. So now every time I've shown this piece like that, that was in Dallas, I show it like as if that original hanging of them was the diagram for all subsequent hangings. So it's always like that. So sometimes people say, can I move, can we do our own arrangement? And I'll just say no. Yeah, that's right. And it has that soap dish in there. That was the first piece on the wall, because I had to, in my studio, plant that in the wall by cutting a hole. And so that's been there for a long time, because I never wanted to patch the wall, just keep that there. So then that became part of the piece. And after that, that's where I got to my opening slide, where I decided that I was going to shift the way I work a little bit. And so I started making these pieces in a larger scale, and that was one of the first ones. That was still fabric covered, and but it was about, you can see what size it was. It's not easy to put into a dresser drawer. These are some of this is kind of a continuation of the dentist. This was from a show called Knuckle Mountain Lookout, and that big piece was there in the show, and then these were some of the other pieces. It was a small gallery. But some of those curvy, tooth-like pieces that were in the show. And that's another one. Now this one, I don't know why I put this one here. But, yeah. I'm showing these. That's called Umami Tsunami. And that's called Blonde from the Bottle. And I guess I showed these pieces because I'm starting to think to paint in a different way a little bit. And that's called Double Bubble. And Fingers. This was weird. Like, I wouldn't have painted a canvas before, so this was sort of me not, I didn't want to just stretch fabric as much, so I'm kind of finding ways to paint things that make sense to me. And this piece is going to be in the show in Galveston, but in a little bit different arrangement. But and then I also started bringing some text back into the things I make. And so, so here's a project that I did. There was a gallery in this flea market called the Kyle Flea Market. Yeah, it's a couple. They also have their own kind of publishing process, but they started this place called Dirty Dark Place, which is kind of like an opposite of clean, well-lighted place, but it's in this really dirty flea market. It's gone now. It was only a year-long project, but they invited artists they made a little gallery in there in one of the booths, and they kind of finished it out like a gallery. It still had traces of this old flea market stall, and they invited people to do it. So they invited me to do that, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was starting to think about these things I'd pass when I was driving, or like that would be like sort of like reverberating signs usually, that I would find myself going by this and saying sunroofing, and why am I still saying sunroofing, or things like this. And I started thinking about these authorless sayings, I guess, they're just out there. And it's a weird kind of authority that's meant to impress you, but nobody's really claiming it so much. But I also thought about that word sunroofing, like what does that really mean? It seems like an Anglo-Saxon kenning, like a metaphor for living or something under the sun, I mean, that's what life is, sunroofing. And so what I did is I got the guy who asked me to do the show to agree to come with me to take that sunroofing sign under the cover of darkness. And he's like really gregarious, and he agreed. Of course, I made him do it. I took the pictures. And we took that sign down, and then I photographed it first here. We took it down, and then with the photograph I made, reprinted it and had a new vinyl thing made that was like the photograph of it and put back up, so that, it was like kind of benevolent intervention right there. You can kind of see like the frame of the photo around it. This is the kind of thing nobody would notice, but except for the very astute passerby. And so anyways, so we did that, but that became the title of this exhibition. And what I did, since they're like a duo, they publish like a zine that goes with it. And I called the show Sunroofing, and this a modified version of this logo became the title of the zine, Sunroofing, right there. And so those were given out in the little gallery, or the dirty dark place. And you can see there's some great, like really charming aspects of this gallery. Like you can see the way they built the wall around the AC unit and things like that. And it was real small, so it was like a small show. This piece right here that is in the middle, it says, you can see some words above it. It says fast itching relief, but that is like a cutout where you can actually reach your hand through and you can see through it, and there's like the junky stuff that's stored in the back behind there. And but what I was going to show you was in this zine, this booklet, which I kind of made like a mock booklet of metal buildings in my area where I live, and these are some of the images. Oh, that's another images from the show. Nobody knew why the monkey was there, especially me. But I just wanted to make something I made, and I don't know. That monkey was on stationery that I received when I was Teacher of the Year, because I got a whole bunch of stuff from like Rotary Club businesses, and that monkey was on it. I kept it for all these years because I liked the monkey, because the monkey made a frame around the sticky note, and so I wanted to make a piece like that. But there's another close-up of the monkey. See, it's also like an example of like the kind of like low relief work that I've been doing. So, but these are some of the images that were in the sunroofing book. So as you went in there, there's all these like metal buildings. I've really been into lately like spotting Quonset huts in the Texas landscape. I actually want to make a chart of them, because I think they're like kind of amazing in the same way that I thought the geodesic domes are amazing architecture, and that there's like quasi self-supporting, like and what's interesting about this is that the idea of volume it gives, like it's got a flat facade, but it seems like you could slice it like any way back, it would still be the same shape. That's what I like about it. It's like cutting a cake or something, and which to me is like that is playing up this sort of conflict between volume and flatness that I've always liked. But yeah, and these buildings that's what was in the book, a whole booklet of those pages, one per page, okay? And this is getting to my last show that was at, in Houston. It was called Temporary Relief. Around the corner from the gallery on one of my visits, I noticed this place. It was like a rehabilitation place for men that was actually being rebuilt. And they had this sign up that said, it's called the Re-Center, and it said the men's center is being rebuilt. But there's so many things about it that intrigued me. One was like the weird phonetic qualities of like putting men's center together, to a word that ends with S and another one that starts with S, but it made all these sort of grammatical and phonetic mashups that were incorrect or tricky, like this, like there should be an apostrophe or should it be capitalized, all these kind of things. So I just was intrigued by the sound of it, the men's center, and the color was a kind of green, kind of like this, that attracted me. But then, so I took a picture of it, and then when I went home, I looked at the picture, and it was kind of blurry because I took it from my car, because I usually don't get out of my car when I drive. So I was driving by, taking a picture, and like I said, it's better to be just fast, right? But then I started thinking, like, well, what does that really mean? The men's center is being rebuilt. It seemed like it could be many things, right? And many good things. I mean, I think that it should be rebuilt, right? Like so. So anyways, but also to me, it was literally like, I mean, this is one thing about the gallery, you know, like there's city stuff here is like, and in the same way that the sunroofing thing was about new sites being built, and that was a sign from this new, like crazy apartments or condos they're building, and Midtown Houston used to be a ghost town. But, you know, there was a few down closer to the museum district. There were some art spaces, but then my gallerist Carrie Inman, who is a sweet, I mean, I love her, but she's part of this new wave of Midtown changing. She was one of the earlier people there, but so this Re-Center being rebuilt was like a remnant of the previous Midtown. So I just started thinking about, like, this is right around the corner from the gallery. I only saw it because I was going to the gallery to visit, so it's in my periphery of art experience. And so it was meaningful in those other ways, in the way that I just encountered it in life. Like that's like, so that kind of became a centerpiece for the works in the show, and which also included some other texts, like that, where these are found texts. And I like them usually because of, I don't know, I like them not necessarily for what they say, but maybe sometimes for their association to painting in this regard, because now I'm starting to paint these things that I would have previously like just use found color. But that was one of the first ones. But also things like the mixing numerals with other symbols and stuff, and the slant of the letters. Like there's something about the slanted letters, which I wouldn't call italic or slanted, that implies speed. And I was interested in the way you were meant to read them quickly. And so the forms themselves are also, it's sort of the Quonset hut form. And that's one of the other things that intrigues me about Quonset huts, because they're often used as advertisements. Their facades on their doors will say, like, the world's largest alligator farm or something like this. And so here's a building that's a building for a thing, but it's also functioning as its own advertisement like this. So something very like, Learning from Las Vegas type, if you ever read this book by Robert Ventura, like talking about buildings being monuments to themselves. But so something about that, but also there's something about landscape in them and stuff that I'm still figuring out because I've made them pretty recently. But that's when it's not leaning, right, that one. So this is one that I always found, wished it was leaning, but a lot of them are about movies, too. I don't know why, but. So these are a lot bigger than, like, these are about 8 feet across, or 96 inches. And that one's, I really like that one in the way that the language in it could refer at once to itself in a kind of pun kind of way, or just kind of joining, like, come on, everybody. This sort of infectious enthusiasm or optimism, like this. Or maybe you could see it in, I don't know. That's one, not all the pieces had text. That's one called cul-de-sac. And here's some images from this show. So that was like the front piece, and you kind of go into the gallery. And I really didn't realize when I put the men's centers being rebuilt right below that cul-de-sac piece, that, as some people pointed out to me, that it was an overt, like, reference to male anatomy. It was beyond me. But after they said that, I was like, oh, I didn't see that. But I didn't mind it. But okay. Oh, okay. So I'm done, except for there's a one warning. Okay. A one warning. One warning before I wrap it up. Could be more than one warning, but this is just one. Okay. If you go to Llano, you know the town with the river that flows under the road. And beyond the old railroad hotel, just a stone's throw from hell's open door. So if you go to Llano, please know that while the river flows pretty, your fate is not your own. As the sun's last light is stolen by the cold and greedy hilltops, the night claims your soul. Thanks. Yeah, that's okay.